Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Jody Lynn, there was something I just remembered I wanted to tell you about. Our guest and I, we were chatting just before we got started here, and we were talking about branding and things like that. And it made me realize and remember the marketing campaign for the Your Daily Dose of Happy service is now in its second round. The first round I got this data, the second round we're actually doing some stuff. And I just wanted to share something that I thought was kind of neat, that I didn't know this would happen. I mean, it kind of makes sense when you hear it, but I mean, you've done a lot of marketing, so you'll get a feel for this, maybe better than the audience will. I don't know. But I'm doing a Facebook ads campaign. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever done a Facebook ads campaign, I know you have, you load in your campaign, it has to get approved. And then once it gets approved, within about 15, 30 minutes, it gets running and then you're running your ads, right? Mm-hmm. I set up this program. We are now at hour 18. It's been approved for 18 hours and not a single visitor has been shown the ad yet. And the reason I found out is because Facebook, when you have a campaign like the one I've got set up, has to work through all the different iterations before it finally starts serving ads, trying to figure out where the best combination is. It can take up to 3 days.
What?
To figure out where it's going to go, depending on how you got the thing configured.
Wow.
I never knew that. That was wild.
So I didn't know that either.
You're right? Yeah. We both done Facebook ads before. Never heard that before.
No. Yeah. That's interesting.
It's pretty wild.
Just finding the right people.
That's right. That's right. Well, in this case, it was the right AI. AI is very helpful. I do like AI a lot.
That's right.
By the way, for those who follow that kind of thing and who aren't afraid of the AI, Claude is really cool. I'm getting to like Claude right now. So just mentioning that one. Okay, so let's bring our guest in. Her name is Tammy Cox. And I'm going to let her tell her own story. But as so many guests have come onto the show, she's been through her own trials and tribulations. But they led her to a career of trying to help people out with their marriages, to help keep their marriages going, specifically helping women do that. And so she's going to tell us all about that. But first of all, she's hailing from hot Arizona today, where the temperature is down to 105 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yay.
Hey, Tammy, how you doing?
Doing so good. How are y'all?
We're doing great. I love it. So other than try to keep cool in Florida, how are things down there? Or in Florida, rather, in Arizona, right? Try the other end of the country.
Yeah, because I had mentioned Florida.
You mentioned, yeah, that's stuck in my brain, right?
It's going well. Like I said, it's cooling down, so I am very happy about that.
Yeah, I understand. I think listeners are too.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to give us your story. You got to tell us how you ended up doing what you're doing, because we find that's always where the juiciest, coolest stuff is. I mean, it's always painful to go through, and no one ever wants to go through it. Yeah. But that's where we learn the most lessons. That's where we get the greatest amount of knowledge. So we always want to hear the stories.
Okay, I'll give you the juice.
All right.
So I guess if we're going to take it all the way back, it goes back to my childhood, which was pretty traumatic. And, I grew up in with a lot of abuse, we could say physical abuse, and a lot of control, a lot of manipulation. And, my father ended up dying when I was 11, who was also, my abuser. And obviously this created a lot of shit for me. Oops. Sure.
Oh, the FCC isn't paying any attention. Don't worry.
Okay. So basically, this left me very I was angry. I had a lot of resentment. I was very bitter. And then fast forward to 26, I'm a wife and a mom, and all of a sudden, all these triggers from my childhood just start popping up. And I kind of didn't know what to do. I tried reading books. I went to seminars. I went to church. I tried the prayer. I did everything that everyone told me to do. And I just could not stop the twitching, And so what did I end up doing? I ended up, after lots of therapy, that was what I spent the most time in, and nothing really scratched the surface. It kind of just it would get better for a bit, and then it would go back down.
Wow.
And when my marriage had reached this point where it was just like, it was either going to fall apart or I was going to fix it, that's when I made the decision to heal, like really heal. So I started going through my own trauma treatments, started neutralizing my trauma. And that's when I completely transformed. I transformed not only myself, but my marriage, my family, really all my relationships changed just from this decision I made to heal. And after, I don't like to use the word after because I feel like it's an ongoing process, but when I got significant results, I was just like, you know what? The whole world needs this. Like the whole world needs this kind of transformation. So yeah, that's when I decided to specifically focus on trauma and then women inside of marriage, because the most intimate relationship is our marriage. Like think about it. We share a life, we share a house, we share a bed, we share a closet, we share all the things, right? And so there's no mirror quite as close as our marriage. So that's where I decided to focus, because that's where I saw the biggest transformation and also the biggest pain point.
Yeah. And this is one of those pain points that you illustrated so beautifully. We go through this horrible pain point and then we want to share with the world afterward. It almost makes me wonder, like, do we have like this negative speak that goes on? Like, I want everybody else to feel this too, but that's not what it is. I mean, it literally is, I've come out of this better. It's just amazing to me how often though, I mean, story after story that we hear on the show, that we share ourselves, it's always about, I went through this terrible thing, I came out the other side, and I want to share it with the world. I'll say one thing about that. That gives me more hope about the world than anything else. The fact that there are so many people like yourself who go through stuff, come through at the other end and say, I want to help people because I've learned this really cool stuff that people need to know about.
Yeah. And think about it. Like when we get out of the shame cycle, so often we like bury all of our stuff in our shame and we're like, we don't want to talk about it. And I'm like, no, the key is to like let the shame out. As soon as it comes into the light, the darkness in it like completely dissolves. So it's like, I think I noticed this with my clients, like when we go through their healing journey, they all of a sudden get like this purpose light bulb like turns on and they're like, no, I want to give this to everyone. Like everyone gets to have this. So it didn't just happen to me. I think it happens to most people where they're like, oh no, that painful thing that was so awful actually is like the best thing that ever happened to me.
I can't tell you how many times I've had people say that here
Yeah.
on this program. Yeah. That's the best thing that ever happened. I remember the first time I heard that, it came from one of my other co-hosts, Joel Elston. And I said to him, are you out of your mind? That was literally my response.
Yeah. I mean, it is
crazy
of your mind. So you are that old mind.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. But it's really revealing though, just how powerful these kinds of transformations are. So you came through the other side and you found yourself wanting to share with the world, which was wonderfully commendable. I was kind of curious when you were talking about the shame portion. The reason I'm curious about that is I found in my own experience and through interviewing many people here on the program that once we get these things out into the open, we're kind of shocked at how small they are.
Yeah.
It's only when we're going through them that they just seemed overwhelming. Did you experience that with yours? Do you find that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that most people, like if you've been married long enough, most people have struggled in their marriage. It's just here in the US and in other, countries, mostly first world, they tend to just be like, I'll start over again, right? Like, I'll just pick someone different the next time. But what I noticed is we tend to pick the same, it's a different face. But it's the same kind of personality. It's because there's a reason why we're attracting that everything in our experience. The reason why we're attracting them is because of the beliefs that we hold. So it's like, yeah, you can wait and, go through 5 of these things if you want, but you could also just heal now, Because like when I healed myself, my husband transformed because the glasses in which I perceived life got switched out. And so all of a sudden I didn't see the horrible things in him anymore. I saw like he changed to me through my, my perception. And so that's what we do when we heal. We heal our perception. No one around us actually changes at all.
Isn't that odd? It's not only odd, it is revealing. I think you revealed it very nicely there, how it is that when we experience these shifts, what we're ending up doing is changing not only the way we feel about it, but how we think about it.
Yeah.
And when we think about it differently, the experience becomes different.
Yeah.
And it seems like the whole world just changed. It was really just us.
Mm-hmm.
It does, though, because our perception can be switched in a moment. We change one massive belief that we hold. Like in my line of work, we have something called commands, and it's like the strongest negative beliefs that you hold that are really creating your patterns. And so when we find those, we go, "Ooh, there we go. There's the culprit. All we got to do is change this belief."
Yeah.
It really is it's a beautiful thing, and it's simple, but it isn't easy. I will not say it's easy, but it is simple.
One of my favorite phrases comes from a TV series, from the Ted Lasso series, in which the therapist in that show says, "The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off," which is exactly what the process is.
It will piss you off. You're like, oh.
Because and what you're getting pissed off at is yourself. You just don't realize it at the time. You think you're getting pissed off at, like you said, your husband or your wife or somebody else. You're pissed at yourself.
Yep.
It takes a while to come to grips with that. That's what the truth part is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. This is it's nitty gritty stuff. That's where we're facing those mirrors. That you described it nicely as a mirror. That's what the other person is. But it's not just that one person. I mean, all of life is mirroring stuff.
Every friend, every person you have ever met, every circumstance, everything that you experience in life shows up because of a belief that you hold.
Mm-hmm.
Now that will piss you off if nothing else will.
or not. Like at this point, I just recognize it. It's just feedback. Like it's neutral. Oh, isn't this interesting? What have I been thinking about today?
Right.
I kind of have to, it gives me the opportunity to kind of look at the thoughts I've been kind of holding on to and chewing over all day. We don't have to shame ourselves over it, but we do get to look at it and be like, okay, this is some interesting feedback.
That's another key phrase right there, shaming ourselves. I mean, I think it's fair to say you talked a moment ago about how all marriages tend to have stuff that comes up. I think it's probably safe to say everybody shames themselves at some point in their lives, and a lot of us do it as a career.
We're professionals.
Yeah, I was the queen of that. I hated myself so deeply. It was really hard for me to just be alone with myself. And I think a lot of us have that. A lot of us have very negative images of ourselves that we get to confront, because if we're going to heal, that's the first thing we get to look at, because everything is a reflection of the relationship we have with ourselves. So yeah, I mean, we get to look at that.
Mm-hmm. Tammy, I'd love to hear about how, when you started to go through this journey, how that interaction with your husband went. Like, did you tell him, like, hey, I realized this about myself, or this, or like, was he a part of that healing journey? And what did that look like?
Yeah, he wasn't at first. In fact, he was, whenever, I've noticed this with my clients too, whenever one in the partnership decides to change, the other one gets very uncomfortable. Think about it, like between two people, there's a whole universe of connection. There's like, you are just in tune with that person in a certain way, right? And so when one person changes in that partnership, the dynamic shifts forever, right? And so he was very uncomfortable with it. He was like, what does this mean? Where's like my fighting partner? Why aren't you arguing with me? Like, you're changing the whole system on me. Like, update me. And I was just like, you know what? Like, I'm going here. I don't know where you're going, and that's okay. But the cords are being snipped. All the codependency cords are being snipped. I'm going up here, and whatever happens between you and I, it happens, but I'm going here. I knew that I wanted happiness and I wanted peace for myself. And I just sort of said, whatever you choose for you, that's cool. I'm just going here. And he was uncomfortable for many months, I think. He was kind of turmoiling and like trying to pick a fight with me. Like usually it's you picking the fight. Like he was just so thrown off by this new version of me. And so when this happens with my clients, I tell them, nope, this is normal. You're switching up the system on them. Now, in my relationship, I'm the controller and my husband's more the supporter. But usually with my clients, they're more the supporters and they're married to controllers. That's just who I attract. And so I tell them the hardest thing, if you know about trauma bonds and stuff, the hardest thing for a controller is to be out of control. So I get why he is struggling right now with you switching up the system on him. Because that's how I am whenever my husband tries to switch the system. But I just tell him, hang on a bit. For me, it was like probably 3 to 5 months where he was really like, okay, like what's going on here? But once he saw the peace and the joy that I was experiencing, I think he just was like, yeah, I need that. Like, I want that, you know? So it wasn't, I think that was kind of the simple, like, because I didn't really have the words to give him in that moment of like, I just was kind of like, I'm going here, you do you.
Well, that was communication, though. I mean, you could have kept going and done it with, the curtain drawn, and you didn't do that, which I commend you for, because it's really hard when you're dealing with a partner who is not communicating what's going on, and then you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm more of the over communicator in the relationship. He's the under and I'm the over. So that's kind of our pattern. But yeah, it is frustrating too. And that's why with the supporter, the women that I work with, they tend to be supporters. So we work through like, no, you get to say all of your truth. Like, first of all, most of them don't even know their truth.
Yes.
A lot of women is they don't even know what they want. So I'm like, first of all, we need to figure out what you want.
I got a clue for you, Tammy.
What?
It's true for men too.
Oh, really?
It really is. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to know.
It's true.
No, I think you're right. I think as humans, we're not often asked, hey, what do you want? But
we're not asking ourselves that either. We go through lives following patterns that we were trained to do through our upbringing.
Yeah.
And we don't question it until something goes wrong, which is really too late to try to ask yourself what it is that you really want in life.
Yeah.
That's why it went wrong in the first place. Yeah. So yeah,
Or
it's
even
not everybody does that. What's that, Jody Lynn?
Or even like, what is bothering you? Like, why does this interaction bother you? Most of the time it's completely unconscious. I don't know. It just pissed me off. That's it. You shouldn't have done that. You should be nicer or whatever.
Just asking the question, like, why does that piss you off? That's like, it's mind blowing, but it's like, it gets the other person to think, oh yeah, why did that trigger me? What wound did that like poke at, you know?
Yeah. I tell this story all the time on our show. I utilize my husband as my transformation guide. He doesn't really know, like he knows because I've told him this, but since we've gotten together at the very beginning of our relationship, he said something to me. We were driving to his dad's or something. It was the first time I was going to meet his family. And we were dating for like a month or a month and a half or something like that. And he turned and he said, hey, are you good for money? And like, trigger hit, like shot me in the heart, like immediately like angry and then like tears. And he like turned and looked at me and was like, what just happened here? Like, what are you okay? And I was like, not okay. I don't know why I'm not okay. And I can't talk. Like, we were pulling into his dad's driveway. I was like, can we just put a pin in this and then come back? Because I had no idea why that got me so upset, but it got me upset. And he was like, oh, okay, sure. Are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine. I just need to figure this out. And he's like, okie dokie, whatever. Then fast forward, the day's over. We get in the vehicle and I'm like stewing about this. And he's like, do you want to talk about it? I'm like, not yet. And then like, I go home and I unravel. And I'm like, why did that upset me so much? And in my mind, it was that he thinks that I can't take care of myself, that I'm useless, that I'm not successful, that all of these things came out, and I journaled about it, and it was all on my paper. And I was like, wow, that's awful that he thinks these things. And then it like clicked. Oh, I'm the one that said those things. All that he actually said is, are you good for money? And I'm like, okay, this is my perception. This is my interpretation of everything that's just happened. And now what? Now what do I do with this? And so I had to go back to him. I'm like, the only thing I can do is ask him, which is terrifying. Like we just started dating, and now I'm going to ask you, like, do you think I'm a total loser? I am terrified to ask this question, but I brought it up. I was like, hey, this is what happened. When you said that, this is what I heard. Did you mean that? Like all the things that I heard that you didn't?
Yes, of course I did.
Yeah, that's what I thought he was going to say. I was so terrified. I was like, oh my God, I'm a loser. I'm an idiot. Like all of these things. It was like this just pressure. And then I asked that question, and he's like, of course not. He's like, I don't even really know how much money you make. I just wanted to make sure that you were okay. I want to take care of you.
Oh,
I'm like, that is the sweetest thing ever. But it really taught me in that moment that my perception can make or break this entire relationship. And if I would have allowed that to continue, like, oh, he thinks this of me without addressing it, it would have tanked our relationship. Because obviously those are pretty hurtful things to think about somebody. And I mean, I demonized him without even asking. And then when I asked the question, it was so innocent and so lovely.
What conclusion you made. But it's true. So money, in the subconscious, money is directly connected to our self-worth. So money is self-worth. So whenever it's a money conversation, we're really talking about your own self-worth.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But I utilized him to figure out my trauma because I knew he was my closest mirror. So anytime I get upset with him, it's my cue to look in and be like, okay, why? What am I perceiving about whatever he said? Because he didn't say, he's not a man. Well, he's a man of many words, but in these contexts, he doesn't say much, but it's the things that he said that triggers me. And I'm like, oh, opportunity.
Yeah, because if someone just says it, like I tell it to my kids like this, if I walk down the street, someone yells at me, hey, be a word, right? I'd be like, keep walking. They're not talking about me. I don't identify myself that way. So why would I get mad about it? But if they say something that I do, there's some truth to in my own mind, I will get triggered because the trigger is just like, it's like I said, poking an old wound. So in my line of work, what we are doing is we're neutralizing the traumatic event so that when we go back to the event, it has no emotional charge. So, the only meaning that anything ever has in life is the meaning you give it. And each person has what we call relative beliefs. So nothing is right or wrong. We've just made it that way in our own head by our experiences.
Isn't it alarming how strong our beliefs are? I mean, seriously, it's alarming. It's also exciting. I find it to be both to be true. It took me a while to come to that conclusion, but once I realized the truth of it, it kind of told me we're pretty powerful. We don't give ourselves a whole lot of credit for it, but we're pretty damn powerful.
So powerful. We are so powerful. If anything in my transformational journey did I learn that, it's like we are also massively powerful that we've created our entire life. It's just we want to look at it and be like, I didn't do this. It's like, yeah, you did. And I'll show you. But then once we take like the guilt and shame out of it, it just gets to be like neutral feedback. Like it doesn't have to mean it doesn't mean you're worthless. It just means that you didn't know. And now you get to do it on purpose. Like you could reformat the whole thing. And why wouldn't you? But it's like, don't shame yourself for it. We all have that programming in the third trimester and then the first 5 years of life. So like we all have the program. It's just like what we get to do with it,
I think probably the biggest challenge for all of us, I love the way you described that. The biggest challenge there is recognizing that we have programming. I mean, it's not like you come out of the womb and they hand you a book that says, okay, you're programmed. Here's how it all works.
Here's your system.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. That's why I love that modern science is catching these things like epigenetics nowadays, where like we're recognizing that 95% of our beliefs did not originate with us.
Yeah.
95.
It's
So
crazy.
it's wild. It's but a lot of people get discouraged by that because they don't realize that you can change a belief.
Yeah. Well, that we have a lot of experience with that because we don't change our beliefs. So therefore we believe we can't change our belief because we believe that we can't change our belief because we believe we can't change our belief.
This is circle. This is circle.
The thing that I always admire is whenever I see somebody who usually they self-describe as being ADHD, they're so focused on something. They're intently focused. They're focused in bulldog mode. They've got the jaws clenched around the thing that they're focused on. And then they talk about how they can't change. And I'm thinking, you're the most powerful person in the room. What are you talking about?
That actually drives me really crazy. I'm like, no one has ADHD. Give them a subject that they love and they will eat it up. Give them a subject they hate and they're going to find every way to get out of it. This is like, hello, this is the most simplistic, like we're human beings. We all love different things, but please stop calling yourself ADHD.
Or change the way you think about it. I mean, my other co-host, Joel Elston, says that's his superpower. And he literally means that. He thinks it's the best thing that happens in the world that he has ADHD, and he'll brag about it here on the show. He says, this is great stuff to have.
And what that means is he's not a people pleaser. That's what it really means.
That's right.
It means that he hasn't changed himself so much to make himself do things that he doesn't like doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you knew his history, you'd understand why he came to that conclusion. Because, yeah, he went through his own self-created dark nights of the soul kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's really fascinating to me how these themes just play out over and over and over again. But they're so illustrative. They teach, well, I won't even say teach us, they teach me. Yeah. I've been doing the podcast. It'll be 12 years in September. And in those 12 years, I keep hearing the same kind of story over and over again. It's different people, different storylines, different experiences, all kinds of things, some horrible traumas, different kinds of traumas and so forth. But it's the same damn pattern every single time. You hear it often enough, you start to believe it. I mean, if you have trouble changing your belief another way, listen to the same story over again. You'll start to believe it. I don't care how crazy the story sounds to you. You'll still start to believe it because you say, wow, this is much more prevalent than I thought. This is like, I didn't think this ever happened. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty dramatic stuff. So, okay. So you gave us a good background to how you ended up doing what you're doing, being what you're being. But now tell us a little bit more about the work that you do. You say you do mainly work with women. Where does the marriage part come into it? I mean, there are a lot of ways I can think of that it would come in, but for you, where does that become a key piece?
Okay. So kind of like I was saying before, to change one, it's just a pattern interrupt, right? So to change one person in the pair changes the pair forevermore. It's like, okay, so I see a lot, right? Within the couples I deal with. I'm not dealing with him directly, but she gets to the place through her growth where she's actually coaching him.
Mm.
He doesn't know it. It's kind of like with my husband and I, he didn't know I was coaching him. I was just telling him what I was learning. I was telling him what I was doing, but I wasn't telling him what to do directly, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like that. So here she is. She starts working with me. We start going through and neutralizing her trauma, right? Mm-hmm. So if the reason why she picked that man, so I'll give you from my example, right? So I had an abusive father, very controlling, very dominating. He, obviously he died when I was 11, but what we tend to do is either become our mom or our dad. Well, I became my dad, more of a controller. My dad would probably, my dad also had we would call it a sex addiction these days. He died of AIDS. Whatever. Cheated on my mom the whole time, like all the things. I never got to that. Like I was never exactly like him, but in my marriage, I and this is what how people need to see it too, is like, we either become our mom or our dad, but we're not like spot on that. Like I don't have all the attributes my father had.
Thank goodness. That may be too confusing.
But I had enough of them, right? The control, the dominating, and anyways. So when we start, what I really do with my clients, on top of like neutralizing their trauma, is we look at the dynamics, because our goal, if she comes in as a supporter, she's like down here, right? He's the controller, he's up here. What we're trying to do is balance the power out. So what we have to do is get her up here. Because in order for her to have that dynamic within the relationship, she had to make herself less than and less than and less than. I'm not important. I'm not important. I'm not important. And then he gets more power, right? This is just a dynamic I work with mostly, so I'm going to speak to this one. Mm-hmm. So my goal with her is to neutralize that trauma, which is keeping her small, which is keeping the I'm not that important story going. And we neutralize that, and then we're shifting this so we can be somewhere close to the same level. Because in order to have a healthy relationship, both need to be autonomous, and they both need to be just as important. We need balance. We need equal partnership. This goes with every relationship.
Talk about the autonomous part a little bit more too. I mean, what do you mean?
That means that she gets to be 100% herself, do her thing, be all her. Mm-hmm. He gets to be all him. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes people be like, oh, well, how will that work? We need to, like, it's, marriage is all about giving up yourself for the other person. It's not.
Not if you want the last.
No, I firmly believe that there is always a win-win. When I'm going into some sort of conflict or something that needs to be resolved between my husband, I am looking for the win-win. That means I firmly believe that there's a way that he can win and I can win, that I'm not trying to overpower him. I don't want to like dominate him, and I don't want him to dominate me. However, we both get to say, here's what I'd like. Here's what I'd like. Okay, how can we find the win-win in this? And I believe there is always one, even if it's not right there in that moment. Like, sure. My husband and I still aren't 100% on board with our parenting styles and, those kind of things. However, I'm constantly looking for the win-win. And so the whole dynamic we get to shift in the relationship is her stepping into her power in this situation, right? And that gives him the freedom, and then kind of easing his trauma, because if he's a controller, that means that he grew up a certain way, dominated, controlled, right? And so it's me pretty much teaching her how to nurture his trauma response. So I don't work with him, I work with her, but through that, the marriage is.
So when you made an interesting comment there, I want to have you expand on it a bit. You talked about how you want to nurture his trauma response. That I can hear that being taken a couple different ways. So I know you mean it one way, not the other. I want you to elaborate on that.
Okay, so for a controller, the way we grew up is being. So your personality is developed in the first 5 years. Our personality is developed by basically our way of coping with our family of origin. It's how we survive our childhood, essentially. So in my household growing up, it was violent. Like, my dad was violent to us, but we were also very violent with each other. I had an older sister who's developmentally delayed, and just aggression. I had to learn to be very physically aggressive in order to survive my childhood. My sister tried to kill me the very first time she saw me as an infant. Like, wow. She's been arrested more times than I could count just because of her violence towards everyone. So we develop because of our childhood. So basically him being a controller, he felt like he had to, in order for him to have anything he wanted, he had to hold on tight and slam it into place and control it, right? And so with her, all he wants is her love. But she triggers his response by pulling away, and he triggers hers by coming at her, right? I don't know other ways to, hopefully you're getting this, but we need to make him feel safe too. And in order for him to feel safe, she needs to speak up and be honest, because the supporter doesn't. She pushes her stuff down. She doesn't talk about her emotions. So what that does is it really is she's creating that dynamic just as much as he is. So we need to teach her how to not be timid, but be bold in her choice of who she chooses to be. So she has to raise up her energy, like I said. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, it makes sense. I was trying to delineate between that and what is often, I'm sure you encounter this too with your clients, what is often interpreted in it that what you're really trying to do is to enable them. And you're not talking about enablement at all, but it's an easy distinction to miss.
Like him, she has to step into her controller. She has to take up space. She has to be bold. She has to become match his energy of like, nope, I'm not doing everything you want. I'm not going to tiptoe. I'm not going to just make myself small because you want me to do X, Y, Z. Because typically that's what she does. She does everything for him and nothing for herself. So what we got to get her to do is say, nope, you're important. You're going to do these things for yourself. You're going to take up your space, and you're not going to let him bulldoze you, because you are just as responsible for the dynamic of what you allow as him doing it. You know, it's like they both have the responsibility in the relationship. Like two controllers, they don't end up together.
Not usually, no.
No, I have dated controllers. There's no way that would work. There's just no way. I needed my husband's dynamic. He's soft, and you know, he, especially with the abuse I came in with, it was like my two commands around men were men hurt me and men are scary. These were my dominant beliefs around men. And so I needed that soft man, you know? And so there's a reason why we attract who we attract, but at the same time, I also don't get to bulldoze him and dominate him and crawl all over him. And like, I even tell him, like, please don't let me do that to you. Don't let me do that to you. Like, you know, so it's just about knowing the person, first of all, no judgment, but knowing your personality and saying, okay, I get this dynamic. I get why I have this personality, but then who do I get to grow to be in order to have that healthy dynamic?
Yeah. I just thought of a story that illustrates how challenging this can be too. It does involve a married couple, but it's not so much their relationship, although that does play a role in it. It's more their relationship with their daughter.
Oh, yeah.
And the relationship with the daughter is, the way you describe, you know, standing up, fighting, and so forth, remind me that they kind of do it in a way that they don't realize is actually counterproductive.
Productive?
Counterproductive.
Oh, counterproductive. I was like, how is that productive?
Yeah, no, it's counterproductive. Okay. The way it's counterproductive is they constantly are fighting their daughter over stuff that they want their daughter to change behavior on. And they don't seem to grasp that the more they fight, the more they train their daughter that the best way to get what she wants is to fight for it.
Yeah.
Now, some people say that she's learning to stand up to them, and that they're learning to stand up to her. But they're doing it in a counterproductive way. That's why I'm trying to show this is tricky stuff. You have to know how to delineate it, how to handle the situation in a way that you're not escalating and encouraging somebody else to escalate.
Well, that comes down to motivation, right? It's like I teach my ladies, like, before you get into any conversation with your spouse that could potentially be negative, you have to identify what you want. For instance, you go in looking for the win-win. I'm looking for the win-win. That is what I am going for, right? And so that changes everything. It changes the way I go and approach my husband. Hey, babe, can we talk? Like, so know what you want out of it, right? And if I know that there's a win-win possible, I'm going to approach it differently on that note, right? Because I'm not saying you. Think about how most people communicate. It's like there's got to be someone who's right and someone who's wrong.
Right.
Like that whole dynamic, it has to leave if you want a healthy relationship with anyone. It has to be like, no, I want you to be heard. I want you to be seen. I want you to be felt. And I also want to be seen, heard, and felt. Like, it's not one or the other. It's both. So if we treated every relationship like that, think about how beautiful our relationships would be. It's like,
Oh yeah.
like even our kids. It's like they get, if we treat other people truly how we want to be treated, then all of our relationships are going to thrive, because we believe I'm not taking from you by me being the right one and you being the wrong one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. I like the way you described that too, because it's one of the bigger challenges that are involved with this kind of dynamic, especially the right and wrong dynamic. Because I mean, you really nailed it when you said that. One of the big challenges with the right or wrong dynamic is that if you're going to think in terms of right and wrong, somebody's got to be wrong.
Exactly.
That's a real problem. Because if somebody's going to be wrong, we're instantly back into the realm of talking about how somebody's self-esteem has to be torn down. No.
And it's like, then we don't have so then we can't have a win-win. It's not possible.
Right.
It's a lack mentality.
Yeah, huge lack mentality.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't know anything about that, Jody Lynn, do we? We've never experienced that.
Never talked about it. What's that? That exists.
So rare these days.
That exists everywhere. But other than that, it's actually one of the biggest challenges we face as human beings. We seem to be going culturally, and not just here in the U.S. or even in North America, throughout the world, we seem to be going through a period of learning to recognize these kinds of things about ourselves. I don't think this is just first world stuff. I mean, it plays out differently in different countries, but the more that I interact with people from other countries, the more I realize this is global. I mean, you mentioned epigenetics before, Tammy. This is epigenetic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we're at a time in history where, I don't know if you follow about the vibration of the planet. It's never vibrated this fast. Technology moves fast. Everything moves fast. So it's in whatever direction we're going in, whether we are going up the emotional scale or down the emotional scale, it's going more rapidly.
New word.
It's rapidly. So we're not going to be staying in one place. We're either going up or we're going down. And it's just naturally, biologically, we're naturally programmed to go down, to be more negative. So if we're not working ourselves up the emotional scale, we're just going to get wrapped up because things are going so fast now. So.
Well, you add in the fact that we live in a culture in societies that are very drama oriented. Drama and people are becoming more and more aware of that in a very major way. That's one of the things technology has done for us, good or for bad, whichever way you want to look at it. That's one of the things it's done. It has mirrored back to us just how focused we are on drama, and that just how much we enjoy drama, to the point where we're actually creating it. Even when we're saying, I'm not going to create it in my own life, but I want to watch it in somebody else's.
I mean, think about it, Walt, because if life was like this, how fun would that be? It's got to go up and down and all around, right? It's it wouldn't be, it would be kind of lame if we were just nothing ever happened.
That's right.
A little excitement. So, I mean, my husband will say that if I'm watching some of the shows where there's a little bit of arguing, and he's like, babe, you preach positivity and you're watching that. And it's but I'm a studier of human beings. I want to know why they do the things they do. I want to know what makes us what we are. And so part of that is just watching the dynamics in different relationships. And I also like to assess it, be oh, well, he's doing this, and who knows why we do it, but I'm drawn to it. However, I won't watch the news. I don't get wrapped up in certain things, but there are certain things that I do enjoy watching.
Well, and I think it comes back to what we were first talking about in the very beginning of this program, was that, we have heard time and time again on this show and in our lives, and people that we admire, is they go through this difficult transformation. And then on the other side, there's this beautiful light, and you want to share it with the world. And I think that when I'm watching TV, that's what I'm watching for. It when it's like a love story, it's like the prince comes in and sweeps the woman off her feet. Like that is the transformation. That's the beautiful glow at the end that is shared with the world. But I think going through the trauma and seeing people transform and make something beautiful out of all of the darkness is addictive.
It's the hero's journey, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like we don't. It's not a happy ending unless it started real crappy and you went through some stuff. It's like I think trauma is one of the greatest gifts. Mm-hmm. It's like, but if we see it that way, because there's some people that one big thing I see in my line of work, the one thing that will hold someone back from transformation is unforgiveness. Mm. If you refuse to break up with the negative past, we can't go very far. Like there's not going to be much transformation. You have to let go of it. You have to reframe it. And that's part of it is like, we get to go back to the trauma and you get to reframe it so that it doesn't haunt you with some awful thing. Like, look at you, you're still alive, you're thriving. And like I said earlier, it's like, I'm so grateful for my horrific childhood because like, I don't believe that I would have found the peace and the joy and the happiness that I experience now if I wasn't there before. Mm-hmm. Heaven on earth feels much, much sweeter after you've been dragged through the lowest lows, right? And so there is a sweetness to it, a juxtaposition of like, I was there, but now I'm here. It's like, it's the hero's journey. Like, mm-hmm. We want that.
Yeah.
I think it's true. There's another piece, I think, as well, which is, this is the self-knowledge piece, I'll call it. And it ties in directly with what you were talking about for actually most of the show so far, about how we live in a world of mirrors and we have these constant opportunities to decide, okay, this is my reaction. Jody Lynn's story earlier was a beautiful example of that. This is my reaction, not somebody else. This is what the way I'm thinking about it, not the way he's thinking about it or the way she's thinking about it. But we have to be willing to be not only willing to look at that and to learn from it, but we also have to kind of pay attention to what our tolerance level is at any given time. I think one of the things that happens, for instance, you mentioned news. One of the things that happens with news is people just inundate themselves so much that they get sucked up in it because it just becomes their entire focus. People. I think of people who watch one of the major news channels all the time. Doesn't matter left, right. Doesn't matter which person they are. They're sucked into this thing, and they're absorb, and then they wonder why they behave a certain way. Well, God, hey, how about you're paying attention to this thing and you're feeding yourself and you're programming yourself in this way? That's where the self-knowledge piece comes in. Recognizing this is where my limits are. This is what I can handle at the moment. This is what I can't handle. This is where I need to take some time off. This is where I can dive into it because I enjoy it. You have to know yourself.
Yeah. Well, I love, Jody Lynn, I love your response when that happened. Like that's what I try and get my clients to the point where they get curious. Okay, you got triggered, get curious. And you said you whipped out your journal and you really dug in. Like that is the key to transformation. It's not just being like, well, I got triggered and you said these things and
don't say them ever again.
Right? In that moment, we want to blame it on the other person, but you had enough self-reflection to go within and be like, let's see what this is about. And if we all did that when we got triggered, man, we would get such massive insight about ourselves of like, it had nothing to do with what he said. It had everything to do with the meaning I made about what he said. Mm-hmm. And that's what trauma is. It's the meaning we made out of the event. It's not the event itself. Mm-hmm. The event itself is just neutral. It's like any feedback. It's just neutral, right? And so to get curious and to be like, no, I'm going to investigate what beliefs I have going on. And then the fact that you did that 1 month into your relationship, like you just set yourself up for like a really great partnership because of that self-reflection. So yeah, if everyone got really curious about their trauma responses, their triggers, instead of pointing fingers and blaming someone else, it's like, look deep within you because that's where all the answers are.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to be like 100% transparent, I went from bad relationship, worse relationship, even worse relationship, over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And before I met my now husband, I was like, all right, if it's to be, it's up to me. And I am the only common denominator in all of these past scenarios, just me. So I need to fix something. I need to learn something. And I was just in this place of, it's my trauma, it's my perception that's driving all of these things. And I can have a healthy and wonderful and beautiful partnership, but I need to do the work. And it's interesting. I never experienced that fear in my relationship from my partner, like of me changing or anything, because he came in when I was like, I was a shitty person before this. None of my relationships worked. You need to know that I am in a transformational stage. I'm learning, I'm growing. I had a relationship coach before I had a relationship. Like, so he was like, oh, got it. You're a little weird, but I like it.
No, like, think about it. You don't know what you want until you've experienced a lot of what you don't want, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it makes sense. You went through all those crappy relationships and you're like, yeah, I think I'm going to try something different.
Yeah, totally.
It isn't amazing what happens when we try something different.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And when we go within and start asking those questions, how it's not the world that changes, but it's the way that we perceive the world that changes. And that changes everything. Our frequency changes, therefore they also do the work and they magically transform too, because you're different and they have to be different now.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's not even that they have to, it's just that they are. It's like they just change. It's like
A leads to B. It's inevitable.
Exactly. It's like you know, I always say this to my clients, like, I'm gonna hand you a new prescription and you got to take the prescription, you got to put them on your face and you got to walk around with them. And then you know, don't take them off. And so they throughout the time, they're taking off the glasses, they're taking off the new prescription. I'm like, put those things back on your face. Girl. I'll change you here. But I can't do it if you're still looking through that old lens of victim, you know, because we all, before we start our journey, you know, I was listening to how you worded that, Jody Lynn. It's like we all start out at the beginning of our journey as victims. Like, life happened to me, it happened, they did this and this happened. And then through our transformation, we see, oh, wait, life isn't happening to me, it's happening for me, right? It's happening for my good. So I have the ability to shift it at any point in time. And so the fact that you had a relationship coach before, like, that's what I'd like to shift into next, because I'm like, man, if I can get them before they find the person, before they marry them, man, I think I'd be a couple steps ahead. So I contemplated that a little bit of like, maybe if we clear up some stuff early enough, especially before kids. You have kids?
Not yet, no.
Oh, I love it when people start their journey before they have kids. It's just, you F them up a lot less. I tell my wife, I'm sorry, I was just following the programming. I didn't know that I was messing you up. And of course, they have a lot of grace for me now, but it's like, it's so much more beautiful. And I prefer to get them before they start making more of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
There are a few themes I'd love to go on here, and I'm looking up at the clock, and I'm saying, we can't do all this in 6 minutes. It's not going to happen. I wish it would. I mean, I have like 2-3 different themes that would take a half hour each that I really want to go into, and we just don't have time to do that. So,
Tammy, you're going to have to come back.
I guess I'll have to.
But we do need to do a couple things, which is what the last few minutes are for. First of all, for somebody who does want to work with you, Tammy, we haven't really told them how to do that. We got to give them a clue. Okay. How do they find you? Okay.
I remembered, you know how I was trying to remember earlier? Tammy at reclaimyourmarriage.com.
Okay.
Remembered. That was the first time I remembered.
Congratulations.
Tammy at reclaimyourmarriage.com. But also I can give you my link tree, which has all my socials because I'm on every app. But yeah, if any of the listeners out there are specifically struggling in their marriage, you can reach out to me. I'd love to offer you 25 minutes of my time to do what I call a discovery call, which is kind of dig into the dynamics of the marriage. And sometimes it's just as simple as giving you a little roadmap of like, change these couple little things. But I'd say most people, they need far more than a general roadmap. So yeah, find me, reach out to me on there, and we'll chat.
That sounds fabulous. All right. And we'll be sure to include in the show notes, the link to the link tree to make it easy for people. You can make sure you get that, make sure I get that into the show notes.
Yes.
But yeah. Second thing that we need to do before we finish up for the day is I want to share with you something that I've been sharing for a couple of years now, because I noticed that we as a human race, since the advent of the internet, we've kind of overlooked a very key piece of what happens on the internet. We do these podcasts, we do blog posts, we write books, we post on social media, we're meeting with people in all kinds of different venues, and we're sharing ideas, we're sharing the things that we learn from, and telling our stories and so forth. And we're helping people that we've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see. And we don't get much appreciation for that piece. And I thought to myself, well, we can do something about that here on the podcast. So Tammy, on behalf of those people you've never met, you've never seen, never will meet, never will see, who've been helped by the stuff that you've been putting out there, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this.
Well, don't make me cry.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Thank you so much for that.
And then the third thing that we need to do is, again, part of our tradition toward the end of the show, is I always like to ask my co-host to find the way to tie the thing together, because I have my perspective as a host, right? This is my show from the beginning and all that kind of stuff. But my co-host always brings in a really cool perspective. And that perspective is usually better at what I can do at tying the thing together. And Jody Lynn is like at the top of that heap in terms of being able to do that. So I can hardly wait to hear what her response is going to be. But Jody Lynn, when you think about what we've been talking about, what stands out?
Oh, well, from a very young age, all that I wanted was to find a husband, have a partner, and get married and have kids. And through going through bad relationship after worse relationship, I didn't understand what a healthy relationship looked like. I didn't understand what a win-win looked like. And God bless you, Tammy, for doing this work, for teaching people that healthy relationships do and can exist, that win-wins are possible, that can be the norm. And when we live in a world where we can come together and have these extraordinary partnerships and love and be loved, and like you said, the three things, feel seen, heard, and felt. This is how we will change the world. So thank you.
Oh, that was so beautiful.
She's good at that, isn't she?
She is.
She's really good at that.
Wrap it up in a pretty bow.
Yeah. She finds exactly the right piece to just pull in and just pull that one little bit of ribbon, and everything just ties together. It's amazing. Yeah. So Tammy Cox, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing with us your ideas and your story and your inspiration. You really are inspiring. Thank you for doing that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It has been so fun. And I'd love to come back if you want a round 2 with all those other little tracks you want to go on.
Yeah. I probably won't even remember what they were, because I always remember in the midst of the moment. But absolutely, yeah, let's have you back. I mean, you have the link. You still have the link. I gave it to you. Pick another date. We'll do a second date. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't stop at one date. If you're dating, you're going to have to do a second date to find out, right? So let's do the second date.
That's right.
So thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.